Hello, this is Sophie Lawson from sophielawson.com, and this is episode 204 of the Sophie Art Podcast, which is a little podcast that I do about the art in Tings, and this is an about the Tings dump and doodle, walk and talk, face mask and freedom special, spectacular. It was going to be a walk and talk, but I've just come back from Saltram, like the local woods, and it was so windy I couldn't record the podcast. But this one's going to be, I'm going to do a dump and doodle. What I do is I just do some doodling whilst I brain dump a topic, and the topic is actually, it's going to be face masks and freedom. We're going to be talking about the recent events in Canada with these truckers. So lilDENNiS is with us. He's going to get us straight into this one. Boing! Little kiss for Kitty as well. You can see, if you want to see the doodles, you can see them on YouTube at youtube.com/Sophie Lawson. But I've got so many notes for this one. So, also I feel like I'll tell you what it is. When you're trying to talk about certain topics, what I've noticed is something tries to attack you. Or at least it does with me. It sort of tries to put me off. So I think there is something, and I feel like it's an energy, a negative energy that's trying to stop me talking here. I've got a massive... Hey, did you hear that noise? Weird noise, isn't it? I like it when it happens. You got someone talking on a podcast, and they'll say something, and there's like you hear noises in their throat. I need a drink. That's better. So I'm just going to go straight through my notes and then we'll talk about this. So, well, what happened is a couple weeks ago we had these truckers go into Canada, probably about 4 weeks ago maybe. And what happened was they were there for about 2 or 3 weeks. All they wanted was to talk about. They wanted to talk with the Prime Minister about what's it called? These mandates with like the vaccines and stuff. So basically all they want is freedom, and he wouldn't talk to them, and instead of talking to them peacefully, he ends up getting the forces involved. So it's mad, it is, but for me this is like we've got, well, here we go. See, the thing is, I've got so much to talk about here. I've put the word common sense, or the 2 words, and I think that's what it boils down to. Common sense. So I don't really know where to go with this one because there's so many. I feel like loads of these topics could be their own actual episode, but we've got things like videos being removed from YouTube, which was showing what was actually going on the inside. We've got the main media manipulating what's being shown, and what happens is if the main media is manipulating what's being shown, and you've got this whole bunch of people who only really look at the main media, they're basically going to be believing a lie. And then what happens is on YouTube they've been deleting loads of videos about all these things. I actually saved 25 videos that I was going to talk about on this episode. 17 of them have already been removed. So we had 2 videos where it showed police beating up the truckers. So you had these peaceful truckers getting beat up by police. You've got a horse. They brought these horses in to go into the crowd, and it trampled this, well, like an older lady. So there was this lady peacefully protesting. She got trampled by a horse. They've now put a fence around, like, the city of Ottawa. So basically they've put like this fence up so you can't even get in there. How mad is that? They brought this rule out where they can now take away truckers' money. So basically they can just shut their bank accounts down. But the mad thing about this is they can shut down the bank accounts of people supporting the truckers as well. So basically it has gone absolutely crazy if you ask me. And what I will say is, this is what I said right at the start. This is why this trucker thing was so important, because whatever happens over there is going to happen in the whole world. So basically, I've put if Canada falls, the whole world falls. But then I've put, or does it? Because I don't know if I'm getting this feeling. You know when like you watch these films, like say Star Wars or something. What happens is the dark side gets to a point where it looks like the dark side's going to win. Actually, Joseph Campbell talks about this. Joseph Campbell was this bloke who he always talked about myths and stuff, and he said the dark side has to. The game is that the dark side is dark versus light, basically, negative versus positive, and basically the dark side has to get to a point where it looks like it's going to win, because otherwise, it'd be boring, else, wouldn't it? If the light side always wins, it'd be boring. But what makes it exciting is the fact that the dark side almost wins, but the light side always wins in the end. Which goes back down to this thing I've talked about before. So you've got it's a numbers game. So positive numbers, well, you've got negative numbers, -1, -2, -3, etc. The centre, what all numbers are based on, is 0. So 0 is the centre, is balance. And because 0 is not negative, it means it's positive. It's not negative, so it's positive, which means that the base reality is positive, which means the positive is always going to win. It's like the canvas that everything is playing out on is actually positive. Therefore, no matter what you put on top of it, it's always going to be positive in the end. What else have we got here? I've put officers. Yeah, you've got these like the officers in the government laughing at taking away money from these peaceful protests. And then what some of these videos you had like you got these peaceful protesters, and then you had like a row of blokes in big green, look like spacesuits, look like something out of a sci-fi movie or something, and you couldn't see their faces or nothing. They just looked like a bunch of clones, but they were massive. One of them was he honestly looked about 6.5, 7 foot. He was huge, and they were there just to like intimidate. But the thing is, there was another video showing an aircraft which was from the UN, and basically it looked like, well, this is the only one that's a little bit suspect, but she was insinuating that some of the police were not police, they were actually like army, basically, because what happened before was the police had said they're not going to, what was he called, the police chief said I'm not going to do it, but then he stood down and they brought in a basically aggressive bloke. But all these police as well, all the police have got their faces covered up with these face masks. How convenient, because basically you can't see them. But there was this beautiful video where it was going along the line of all these police officers, looking deep into their eyes, and you could see the sadness in their eyes. But it goes back to this thing of the one thing was the police should have said no. If the police had said no, none of this would have happened. But then I also think maybe it has to happen in order for what's going to happen. In other words, when you're going through like a transition, if you've been doing a certain thing for ages, and you suddenly want to change, if you've got something going in a certain direction and you want to change the direction, the bit when you're trying to change the direction is when you need the most, that's when you've got the most resistance, because the momentum of that, what you've been doing is pushing forward. So you've got to now basically push in the other direction. So what's going to happen is you're going to get a lot of friction. What else? Look, the other thing here, the main media is the lie. There was a reporter, like doing a live stream, who was shot at point blank range. All of this is on, well, it was on YouTube. And I'll put here, look, only the main media was allowed inside. So in other words, they're controlling the story. There was this beautiful video on YouTube. What they did was you had a load of protesters, like thousands of protesters, standing up with the truckers, and then the main media set up their cameras. But what they did was they set their camera up right at the end of the crowd, pointing in the opposite direction, so it looked like there was only about 3 or 4 people there. And if they turned their cameras in the other direction, you would have seen like thousands. So in other words, if somebody's only watching the main media, they're going to look and think, there's not many people there. And then you go on YouTube and they're removing all the videos. So what's happening is the lie is being pushed. And it goes into that thing I've talked about a lot, which is you've got 3 types of people at the minute. You've got the people who know what's going on. You've got the people who have fully believed the lie, almost like brainwashed. You've got this massive amount of people in the middle who are sort of on the fence. Now, if they're only looking at the main media, they're going to get pushed into the brainwashed side. See, so that's what's happening. It's this bunch of people in the middle who are the important ones. I've also, there's videos of them breaking into trucks. They were harassing a business owner who'd stood up with the protests. What's this say? Truth is out now. Yeah, see, what I've put here is they can do whatever they want. The truth is out now. Now this is what I think the beautiful thing is. The beautiful thing is this thing looks like a negative, because basically what's happened is Canada's kind of turned into some sort of like dictatorship. I was going to do something here. It's turned into that German bloke. You know that German bloke with the funny moustache? So what's happened is I've lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. So it's turned into like this dictatorship, but in doing that, they've actually highlighted the very thing that the protest was about. In other words, the protest is about freedom. This big bunch of people who are in the middle, like the big bunch of people in the middle who are on the fence, surely they will have seen now that this is not about anything other than control. So I think a lot of those people in the middle will actually now get pulled over to the positive. And the more people that come over to the positive, the more people that will get pulled into the positive from this middle bit, which goes back into that thing I was talking about, which is this momentum thing. So you can look at the momentum as like the control that they've had for all these years. Basically what's happening is, in my opinion, the governments around the world are in the process of losing their grip. And I feel like, unfortunately, it's going to be a very messy process. Which reminds me of something. Last week we had a storm in Plymouth. There was this storm that hit Plymouth. And I found it very significant, because I thought to myself, the earth will not stand for this forever. We have to end this. But basically, I also thought to myself, all this is going on. The earth, it will not stand for it forever. And the earth has control. The earth has the ultimate control, where it could just say, you know what, I've had enough of this. And it could just take everyone out if it wanted. And I wouldn't blame it for it as well. It's madness. But so yeah, this one's a bit weird, because I've got millions of things to talk about. But the main takeaway really is that what is happening in Canada is so important for the rest of the world. But I think it's actually, I think this is what we all knew was going to happen. I guess what happened is, though, it's a part of you thought, well, there's no way this could happen. Even though you sort of knew it was inevitable. I said this ages ago. I said, like, conflict is now inevitable. Because again, it goes into that thing. You've got to look at it as like energies here. It's one energy which is positive, is trying to stop the negative, and it's basically, it has to be conflict now, which is a shame, but conflict can still be peaceful. That was one of the things I loved about this protest in Canada, was how peaceful it was. So even when these truckers and that started getting arrested, they were still peaceful. And the funny thing is, again, the main media was saying that the truckers were violent and all the rest of it. The only violence on display was by the police. So again, everything's in reverse. Everything is flipped around in reverse. It's very strange, but it's almost comical now. For me, it's got to a point where they are so sort of what's the word? They're not even hiding what they're doing anymore, which is why I think the amount of people in the middle must surely be waking up and realising what's going on. But the other thing that I find beautiful is the support for the truckers around the world was massive, and I think enough people saw that to know that, well, if you think about it, if that's the support that they've got, it just shows everyone around that we will be united around the world. And already we're seeing now new like freedom convoys setting up around the world and everything. But it is so important what happens in Canada, and it's got to a point where you sort of think, how is this even happening? Like, I don't understand how it was able to happen. That's what's so strange about it all. Because, like, to me, it goes back to what I said at the start: common sense. Common sense would surely say that if you've got peaceful protesters and then you've got police coming in to sort of basically suppress them, like, for me, common sense says that isn't right. So I don't know what I think. I don't know what to say about that, really. It's common sense as far as I'm concerned. But then this whole thing has been common sense as well. Creating little creatures. So I think that's it for this one. Like I said, it's been a very strange day, and it's also been a very strange week for me as well. I've had a sort of I've had a bit of a mind attack this week. So that goes in. It's been very distracting. And the thing is, you sort of think you sort of think you're over some of these things, like and then when something happens and it takes you off track, it gets a little bit disappointing, because you think, I thought I was over that. So what happened for me was, I went into a cafe to have something to eat with my mum, and I just got hit with I don't even know what it is. It's linked, I suppose, to social anxiety, but it feels like it goes back into that thing of spirit possession. And I think spirit possession you could look at spirit possession as just like thought possession. In other words, you have a negative thought that enters your head, and instead of just letting it go, a part of you believes it and it attaches to you, and then, very much like the negative energy on the earth at the minute, which is in the sight, which is like pushing forward, what can happen is this negative thought gets inside your head and it starts to build up momentum. And what's so strange about this is I can see, because it's making me act in quite negative ways at the minute. So this is why I went for a walk today into Saltram, to get into nature, because I feel energised by nature. But it's very strange how you can be fully aware of what's happening and yet still somehow feel helpless by it. And I can't help but feel that this sort of thing going on in my head on a personal level, which I believe is going on with a lot of people, because I see a lot of people who are on the podcasts talking about things. They're talking about how they're getting bombarded with negative energies in their heads, and it's a case of sort of sitting with them, I suppose. But I find it very, I would say, telling how it's going on in my head. It feels like the same thing's playing out on the big scale. Like, so that's, but here we go, look. This was never about safety, it was about control. It was never about safety, it was about control. And I think a lot of us knew that right from the start. But unfortunately, sometimes you need sort of, it's almost like you need to be slapped around the head with it to realise what's going on. It's very much like say you've got a bad habit and you know it's a bad habit, and something inside of you says, look, this is a bad habit, I need to stop this. Unfortunately, sometimes the only way that you actually stop it is when something really bad happens, like the wake-up call, basically. So I think what happened is the last few years, a lot of us knew what was happening, but I guess enough people didn't wake up or something, so now it's saying, look, it's going to slap you around the head with it. So it goes back to that thing me Reiki healer said, it'll get worse before it gets better. But again, like I said at the start, it goes back to that numbers game. 0. The base reality is positive. The truth will never be suppressed, no matter what they do. And look, the truth is out there now. I think the people who needed to see it, saw all of these videos on YouTube. So yeah, they can go around and delete all these videos. It doesn't matter, because the people who needed to see it, saw it. And I'm sure if you really look for it, you could probably find it on YouTube or something. That's it really. So I hope you enjoyed this one. It was a bit all over the place, but I suppose at the minute my head's all over the place, and I feel like this situation here, it's what the thing about it is, it's very clever what they're doing. It's very clever, but it's also so stupid that it's one of these things that's so stupid it becomes clever. Like the fact that they're like laughing in front of your face about like taking people's money away and all these negative things. You almost think it's so stupid, and yet it's genius if you think about it. If I was one of these people in government doing this sort of thing, there would be a part of me laughing inside. And it goes into that thing, like the dark side, the negative. It does have a little bit of an advantage on the surface, because it can basically, like the devil for instance, can cheat, lie, it can pretend to be positive. So it does have a bit of an advantage in that it can, whereas the positive has to play by the rules in a weird way. To be peaceful, you have to be peaceful. Whereas the negative can pretend to be peaceful, and then it can be aggressive, and it can because it controls everything, it can sort of super manipulative. But on the surface it looks like it's got more power, but fundamentally it hasn't, because the base reality is love. That's what it comes down to. Peace. So the truth, all of this stuff is on top of the truth. So you do wonder, well, why is it doing this? And I think what it comes down to is each of us are in our own little, some sort of like simulation, and it's just a test. What are you going to do? Are you going to, because we've all got free will here. The police had free will. Each of those officers had free will to say, no, I'm not doing that. They must have known it was wrong to do what they did. And what obviously happened is they thought, if I say no, I'm going to lose my job. But what they don't realise is by saying yes, they're going to lose their freedom in the long run. So you've got to say, what would you rather lose? Your job in the short term or your freedom in the long term? Like that. And I do feel sorry for the police officers in a way, because they've got to live with that. but then maybe some of them will redeem themselves later on. Maybe some of them will come out and say, look, what I did the wrong thing there. And that would be incredibly powerful. But that was it for this one. It was a bit all over the place. Maybe I should have structured it better. But sometimes, well, this is the whole point of these. They're brain dumps. So I just dump me brain out, really. Yeah, look, I've put here as well, look. I've said they say they may drop clips in. Not sure yet. Yeah, I've put they've all been deleted, but they basically what I was going to say was like they can delete as much as they want, but they can't delete everything. In other words, they're going to have to spend the rest of their life deleting everything. There's another thing as well. There was this other video which got deleted as well, and it was the Prime Minister of Canada was talking about how the unvaccinated are. He was basically saying that the unvaccinated are a problem, and I don't know whether we should put up with them. So that's what he was basically saying, and it does go into that bloke, the German bloke with the funny moustache, because that's what he did with the Jews. So I don't know whether we're going to get to a point where that starts happening. They start basically just rounding up the unvaccinated and like wiping them out. I'll tell you, it wouldn't surprise me, and it wouldn't bother me either, because like if they did do that and I got put in one of those things, you would still be, as long as you, this is what I'm saying, as long as you are true to yourself, because what happens is when you look at the truth, you realise you can't die, that's how you become fearless. So at that point, you know that all that matters is you die having lived your truth. So again, they can take everything away from you. This reminds me of a dream I had last week. I had this dream, and I said in the dream, you can do what you want, you can take everything away from me, but you can't take my soul, because I am pure. I think I said I'm pure love or something, and what happened in that moment, my dream character burst into light, white light. It spread out in all directions. So this is what I'm saying. Yeah, they can go and they could round up all the unvaccinated and just like exterminate them. And you think to yourself, no, there's no way that's going to happen. Well, look at what's happened. Look at what's happened here with them going around and basically taking away the bank accounts of peaceful protesters and aggressively beating people up. Peaceful people. So what you got to say is, this is what I'm saying. What's happening only leads into one direction, which is complete control, and it will spread around the earth. Or it spreads the other way, which is freedom, and it's basically one or the other. That's where we're at now, and we are going through the transition of one of these energies existing. But what will happen is, as long as you've been true to yourself, and you can feel when you're being true to yourself, it doesn't matter whether they take your body away, you'll be fine. Because that zero, which is the zero, which is the base reality, is actually, you can look at that as like the creator. It's the source energy, which when you go deep into meditation, you feel it, and it feels like endless expansion. It's limitless freedom. Yeah, and we could. The funny thing about this, lilDENNiS has said it's time up for this one. The funny thing about this is though, a lot of these people, they're actually bringing about their enslavement, and in an instant, this is what's so beautiful about it. In an instant, like that, we could all be free. All we've got to do is just stand up. Like, imagine if all these police officers had said, no, we're not doing it. Imagine if all the people in the government had said, we don't agree with this. But they're all going along with it. That's the problem. And a lot of it is fear. Which goes back to that thing where if you go deep enough, you realise there's nothing to be afraid of. And it's quite funny me saying that, because this last week I've had these mind attacks, which has put me into a state of fear for myself. So even though I know there's nothing to be afraid of, I'm still getting tricked into the fear, which I find that amazing. And I do like that, because what it also does is it gives me a sense of I suppose you could call it compassion or something, because you can imagine how hard it must be for a police officer to say, no, I'm not doing that. It must be very hard. And the easy way out is to just go along with it. But what you don't realise is you're actually making it worse for yourself. Like, it's harder to say no, I can imagine, but imagine the suffering you're going to put yourself through by going against what you know is right. But then I also know that a lot of these people might actually end up being the ones that save us in the end, because they might turn around and say, look, what we did here was wrong. And if they come out but again, it goes into that thing of the main media is controlling everything. So it's a very complicated situation, this. But the best thing that's come out of this for me, the last week or so in with the Canada thing, the best thing that's come out of it is, for the first time really, it was blatantly obvious what was happening here. So the last couple of years, it's been obvious, but only because you've been doing your digging. The last week or so, for me, it was the first time it really became obvious to a lot of people who I would say were on the fence. So this is what I'm saying. Like, in the short term, it looks like they've got the Canadian government have got what they wanted, because they've basically suppressed everybody down there. But in the long term, it's actually going to end up being the best thing that ever happened. Because what they don't realise is they've actually put more energy into the positive. So that's it for this. All that's left is this week's inspirational quote. But what I will do is I will put links in the description to... Well, what I do is I'll put links in the description to a couple YouTubers who were sharing videos. One of them he's called Clyde Do Something or something. Something like that. He's called Clyde. There's another, Matt Belair as well. He's on the ground. And this is another thing that's been so beautiful about this whole thing, is there were so many people live streaming from the actual place. So in other words, the main media putting out their own little story, but if you were watching the live streams, that's when you could see that the story being told was completely opposite of what was actually happening. And that's what I found the most beautiful, was the amount of people actually down there live streaming. Because again, if they hadn't been down there making videos and stuff, like, you would have had more chance of just believing the story. But like I said, I hope you enjoyed this one. And all that's left is this week's inspirational quote, and it actually goes to the lady who got trampled by the horses. So what happened with this lady? She got a little what are they called? Like little walker. I think she's a bit disabled or something, and the horses basically just trampled on top of her. They could have killed her. That's what's insane about it. And the quote goes to her, because what she said was, she said, "Hold the line." Now I like that. Even though she got trampled, hold the line. And that's what it means. Like, be prepared to risk your own life, standing up for freedom. Beautiful. Hold the line. Hello. Hello. Buggy. Yeah.